Well, hello, and welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. I'm Paul Zeidman. Sorry to say, once again, my co-host, Justin Sloan, unable to make it today. So you get just me. Hope that's okay. But I'm still thrilled to talk to our guest today. His bio says he is a dramatist, an author, a screenwriter, and he's also got some educational tips for writers that we're going to get into a little bit later. Please welcome to the show, Barry M. Putt Jr., but he says we can just call him Barry.
Thank you, Paul. I'm glad to be here. Look forward to talking with you.
Oh, it is our pleasure. We were just discussing before we started recording so many things that Barry talks about. I mean, his own body of work is really impressive. I can't wait to talk about the show about the book about the TV show Alice. The story behind that's going to be a great one. But he's also got tips for writers and also something we kind of touch on once in a while here about what to do after you have something that you've written, how to get it out there. So we'll talk about some marketing for writers. But Barry, so as regular viewers and listeners of the show might be aware, we talk about things that we may have watched or listened to or read in the past couple of days that struck a nerve, liked it or hated it. I will go first to give you time to think about it. I talked about it last week. I'm slowly working my way through this phenomenal show on Netflix called Blue Eye Samurai. It is anime, and it is definitely not for kids, but it is a fascinating story about this one character in, I guess, medieval Japan. I'm loving it. I've only got one episode left, and I think they just announced the second season, so I'm thrilled about that, but no idea when that's going to happen. And it was also recommended to me another show on Netflix that it is called Delicious in Dungeon. So if you took an anime show about Dungeons and Dragons and then threw in a whole bunch of stuff about cooking and food, that's what it is. And it's much more entertaining than you'd think. And of course, I like food and cooking, so I got a kick out of it. And it's very anime silly at times, but it's really enjoyable. And I have no idea how many episodes they're going to have, but I think they're just about to release the fifth one. So as of this recording, but that's the stuff I've been enjoying and looking forward to the rest of those. Barry, what about you? What's been on your viewing queue or your reading queue?
Well, it's interesting. It's what you mentioned sounds really kind of fun to watch. And I just finished watching the second season of Julia,
Oh,
which
I love
is,
that.
yeah, I think it's great. So it deals with food also.
Hmm.
I will just say I was a little disappointed to hear that it's the last season.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but that was when I really enjoyed. So.
Yeah, and it's also for for foodies, it's a good show. And if you like if you like Julia Child and you like period work, then it's just great all around. I think I honestly I like the first season a lot more than I like the second. I think the second got a little silly with the whole FBI subplot. I thought that was just kind of weird, but the rest of it I thought was really good. I am disappointed that they canceled it after two seasons, but you can still watch the first two.
Yes.
Okay, so Barry, let's talk a little bit about you. So, a lot of the writers that we've had on, we always like to ask, were you the kind of person that you loved to write when you were a kid? You just, couldn't stop, or were you the kind of like, I don't like writing, but then as you got older, you like said, hey, I actually enjoy doing this. I'm going to do it more and try to make a living out of it.
It was kind of a little bit of both, actually.
Oh, okay.
Um, when I was in fifth grade, I really was engaged by the stories that we were reading in class. And that prompted me to start to write some short stories that I submitted to a publisher. Um, and I was told that they didn't publish stories by children.
Oh,
Um,
I can't
but
believe
that
that.
didn't deter me. And I continued writing. But in terms of reading, I wasn't so much a reader at that time.
Hmm.
Even though I read those stories, but like as I got a little bit older and we had to read, larger novels and things like that, I wasn't so much a reader. That kind of happened a little later. But the writing was always an interest ever since I was in fifth grade in grammar school.
Okay, that's great. I love the fact that they rejected you because we don't publish children. I,
Yeah.
I would imagine that's a little bit different now. So how did you, I guess, start becoming more prolific as a writer? Because as we said, you've got all this great body of work, but it's also covered fiction and nonfiction and and books and screenwriting. So like, what was the start of it for you?
Yeah, I am rather diverse as a writer
Hmm.
in the medium that I write in. What was the start of it? I think when I was in high school, I went to a performing arts high school, and we got an opportunity to do a collaborative show about Tina Steen. Um, a group of actors, and we toured different schools with the United Way, and I wrote a number of pieces for that.
Hmm.
So that was stage writing. And then from there, ultimately I went to school. I went to NYU for dramatic writing. So that's where I got started. And then it kind of splinters off in different directions. I mean, I could talk about that if you want.
Well, we can get to that in a second, but one of the things I also wanted to talk to you about is that you work in a field I don't think we've ever discussed on the show before, is audio fiction. Now, as we discussed before we started that, I'm a big fan of old time radio, so I know, all about that kind of writing, but a lot of people might not be. So how would you describe audio fiction to someone who said, is that like a play that, you just hear, or like, how does it work?
Okay, well, yes. Audio fiction or audio drama is really just telling stories by one. I'm sorry, just one moment here. I'm so sorry.
An important phone call, no doubt.
No important phone call. Okay, yes, I'm very sorry about that. So
That's quite okay.
audio drama, in terms of dramatic writing, right, which is stage, screen, TV, those use two of the senses, right, sight and sound, to
Hmm.
communicate the story. However, audio drama just uses one sound, one sense, which is sound.
Hmm.
It uses it in a couple of different ways, right? We have dialogue, we have sound effects, and sometimes there's music. It's kind of dependent upon uh, the company. And then there's also something else that's kind of unique about it in terms of dramatic writing, and that is that the audience gets to imagine what the characters look like.
Mm.
Uh, Also, the action, right? The places. So there's a lot that, in addition to, it's a little bit collaborative with the audience in terms of that. And I like to call it the poor man's screenwriting,
Oh,
because right, in screenwriting, you can have lots of different locations and go to these different places and have many characters, but there may be some budget restraints.
hmm.
However, with audio drama, really all that you need is a microphone and some actors, and you can go to all of these different places. And budget-wise, it doesn't really cost, very
Anything.
anything, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds, because exactly how they used to describe radio was theater of the mind. That you heard the actors, the performers, and then the sound effects and the music, and it was really just to paint this picture in your imagination. And but also it also reminded me that when I was in college, I took a film class, and we were, of course, we're discussing Citizen Kane, and the instructor said, that you can tell that the people who made this film worked in radio, because there's a line like, "Come on, let's go over to the window and look," and then you hear and you see them all running to the window, and it's like, well, you don't need to actually have them say that, but that is something they would have said on the radio. And also they would say in like an audio drama, "Come on, we got to go over there and check this out," or, "Oh my gosh, he's holding a gun," that sort of thing.
Right. There are some, yeah, definite setups that were done. I think in modern audio drama is finding other ways to communicate that.
Oh, okay.
Definitely, like in the golden age of audio drama or old time radio, which is what you were talking about, that's definitely something that they would use, along with more narration. At that
Hmm.
point, they used more narration than they do today. It's more kind of in the moment. And that exposition is kinds of comes out in different ways through action oriented dialogue.
Okay. So do a lot of audio dramas, do they use more narration, or do they rely on the characters to convey what's going on more? Or is it kind of a split?
They use the characters, I would say, to convey what's going on more, but through the in the moment situation that they're dealing with.
Hmm. Well, one of the things that they always talk about, especially for screenwriting, is that you want to write so that each character has their own distinct voice. That even just by reading it, you can tell, oh, this is something that character would say, and this is definitely something that character would say. Now, when you're dealing with just audio, just the sound, is it more of a challenge to get that across, or is it actually easier because you don't have to rely on I don't have to remember what this character looks like because I can just hear what they're saying and I'll know like, oh, that's Bill and that's Susan over there.
Okay. Oh, that's actually a great question. There's a couple of different things. So I
Okay.
would say that it's definitely important. Yeah, like just every person has their own unique speech pattern. Every character really should have that as well. And there's different ways you can develop that. But also in audio drama, the fewer characters that you have in a scene at a time, kind of the I don't want to say the better, but the more focused and easier it will be for the audience. If you
Hmm.
have 6 characters in one scene and somebody isn't talking for a while, then the audience is going to kind of tend to forget that they're there.
Right.
So that also, so you want them to speak every so often. And also it lends itself more to having, distinct voices. But distinct voices can be through the dialogue, and they can also be through the casting choices.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That is something that, that it really comes down to the actor's ability to really get the character across. That if you have someone who, it's supposed to be this really tough, gangstery type, and they come across as just kind of like a mealy mouth, they don't come across that way, then it almost shatters the illusion for the audience.
Yes.
Okay. So what are some of the audio drama? Okay, well, actually, before we get to what are some of the ones you've written, do you have a genre that you really like to work with the most? I'm sure you've got a wide variety, but you're like, oh, I love crime dramas, or I love horror, or I just really like, well, slapstick comedy as much as you can do with audio.
Okay. Wow. I've written a lot of different genre in audio. Um, Probably the one that I've written the most in is Westerns.
Oh,
Um,
love Westerns.
which is something I really never explored until I did audio drama. Same with
Hmm.
sci-fi. I don't really do a whole lot with sci-fi until I did audio drama. But yeah, I like the Westerns in terms of audio drama. But I've also done some children's stories, which I think are fun, um, and some more realistic stories.
Hmm.
Uh, set in like in the present day. So yeah, that's how I think
Okay.
how.
Okay, one quick question about your Western works. That I'm a huge fan of Westerns, and I guess that's really one where you can make the setting almost a character. That you can, you've got the sound of the horses and the gunshots and all of the sounds you would associate with a Western, but that it really helps almost reinforce the mood or the setting of the story. That it's more than just having two characters who are riding their horses. You can have, something happen or sound effects that are added in that can really just like, okay, like not that you're beating the listener over the head that it's a Western, but it's almost like this enhances the setting. It enhances the genre that this story takes place in.
Yeah, definitely. And especially if you have the series grounded in one specific place.
Hmm.
The Western I write is about a US Marshal, so he travels to different places. However, and that was the first season. We just finished the third season. And I decided to ground it in one specific town. So just like you're saying, then we get to have some personal life and some people and the character of the town. And I selected a real town, so you can kind
Hmm.
of bring some history. I like when I can to kind of blend history um, in with the fiction. You know,
Hmm.
uh,
I love when that happens, especially in that kind of setting, because it even though it's not real, it gives it that definitely realistic sensation that it's almost like this story took place just outside of what actually happened, that sort of thing.
yes, and I'm working on a new series right now about the American Revolutionary War.
Mm.
That is a blend also of fact and fiction. So the history part is fact,
Hmm.
but the character um, that goes on the adventures is fiction. It's supported by the history, but he's not a real person. So
Right, right. But he meets actual people, or he meets true figures in American history.
he does, yeah. He helps General Washington. So
Of course, you can't have a show set during, or you can't have a show during the Revolution and not have Washington involved.
right.
Okay, so let's kind of change directions a little bit. So we've been talking about your audio drama work. Now, as I alluded to in the beginning, that you've written a couple of books, and one of them is about the TV show Alice from the late 70s and early 80s, based on the Scorsese film Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And also saw you had a book about the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew series from the 70s. And I think actually it might have been today was when that show debuted on TV, like by 1977, I want to say. And it shows how old I am. I know Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson were the Hardy Boys. Was it Melissa Sue Anderson was Nancy
Uh,
Drew,
Um,
or
Pamela,
Pamela
Pamela Sue Martin.
Pamela Schumer? Okay, okay. I had one out of the three names correct.
Melissa
So
Sue Anderson, she was on Little House on the Prairie.
okay, yeah, okay. Another show from the 70s. Okay. Okay, so what was the inspiration for doing these? I mean, were you just a big fan of both shows and decided, oh, I want to, I just want to have like a fan's love letter to the show type of thing?
Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh. Another phone
I,
call?
I am so sorry.
Or is your cat there? Is your cat trying to get in the picture?
It is my alarm that is set, and I thought I put it on snooze.
Oh no.
It's off, I hope,
I didn't hear
permanently.
a thing. Didn't hear a thing.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you ask me the question again?
Oh, certainly. So, okay. So what was the inspiration to create these two books about admittedly a somewhat obscure television shows? I mean, everybody likes something. So did you just decide, hey, I really like the show Alice, and I'm going to write a book about it?
So, well, I'm a fan of both of those shows.
Okay.
Um, and I had actually submitted my audio drama writing book proposal to one of the publishers. They liked my writing, but decided not to pursue the book. So
Okay.
I pitched the Alice book, and that's how that really came about.
Hmm.
And then the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew book, which is actually what I'm currently writing,
Oh, okay.
that one that was a follow-up to Alice. So after Alice was published, I pitched that one to the same publisher, and they were interested, and I've been working on that one. So
I have to ask, I'm kind of familiar with Alice, that as part of your research, did you get to meet any of the actors involved with the show, or was it just all you just doing research?
I did talk to people. I reached
Okay.
out to all of the actors that were still around, and I
Okay.
talked to everyone that I was able to talk to.
Can you hint at who they might be?
um, I talked to Vic Tayback's son.
Okay.
I talked to some of the writers
Hmm.
on the show, and some of the actors that were in a number of episodes as well.
Okay. Okay. Actually, that just reminds me that, oh my gosh, this must have been like 20 years ago. I went to Los Angeles for a script read, and the writer was Marvin Kaplan,
Oh,
who
okay.
I think he played Marvin on Alice. He was like the phone repair guy, kind of a chubby nerdy guy with glasses, had a really distinct voice. But it was his script that they were doing the read for, and got to meet him really briefly afterwards. That was my one connection to the TV show Alice.
Okay. Yeah, he did a lot of work and he was producing films, I
Hmm.
believe at one point too. So that's great. Yeah, he
Okay,
played
well,
Henry the
Henry, that was it.
phone repair man,
Hmm.
and I think his wife was, I don't remember what her character name is, but it was Ruth Buzzy
Oh,
was
wow.
she played his wife
Oh my
in a
gosh.
couple episodes.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So one of the things I also want to talk about, so when we were setting up today, that you had all these topics that you were open to discussing, and one of the things I think was, to me, one of the really a big draw was ways to draft a dynamic marketing plan to keep your work in the front of any industry pro's mind. Because a lot of writers think, okay, I've got this great script or I got this great book, and I'm going to sell it. I'm gonna move to LA or I'm gonna move to New York and just everything's gonna be easy, and it's not. So, what are some early steps that a writer could take? Okay, say I've got a script, I've got a book. What do I do now?
I would say it all starts with a query letter.
Okay.
That is your first introduction, right, to the people that you're marketing to. So you want to make sure that you have a dynamic synopsis about your, what you've written.
Hmm.
You want to make sure that if they ask for sample pages, that you give them most exciting pages, and that you leave it in the middle of an exciting moment,
Oh, okay.
because then you want people to want more. Um, I know that they do say that it should be the first pages sometimes of the script. If that's what they're requesting, then you should do that. If you can leave it in the middle, though, of some kind of climatic moment, I think that that's kind of a bit stronger for you in terms of intriguing and engaging them.
Hmm. And one of the things we've also discussed here on the show is that when you are starting to query, to really do your research. That because a lot of, at least for screenwriting, a lot of writers think, oh, I'm just going to send out a blanket email to like every producer and every manager I can find. But then the thing is, like, they may have like a silly rom-com. Like, you don't want to send it to like someone who specializes in horror, or someone who does, like kids movies. And so I would imagine that it's the same for, especially for books, that you have to find, I guess, a publisher that, okay, what do they specialize in? And is that something my book, is that a direct connection? Is that a perfect fit? Is that okay? Yeah, it might be kind of questionable. I mean, how much research uh, should a writer do when they're trying to get ready to query?
I think that's a really important thing to do your research and make sure that, like my book on the craft of audio drama writing, like that's a real specific type of book. You
Hmm.
you don't want to send it to a company that does only fiction, right? Because they're not going to be interested in it. So you really want to do research. I used the Writer's Market book, which
Hmm.
is a book that has all sorts of submission opportunities for books and scripts. And at the time, they actually had an online database. So you
Oh.
could search real specifically. Unfortunately, they don't have that anymore. But the book itself is still a very good resource. So in terms of books, that's the best way. For screenplays, I think a great resource would be the IMDb Pro,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And because then they used to have, oh, I forget. There was a book that they used to have, Hollywood Creative Directory. That's what
Oh,
it is.
yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, they don't have that anymore because of, I guess, the internet, right? You can just go on and find lots of information. So it would be the same, I would say, for screenwriting. Make sure that you're sending to as close a match as
Mm,
possible to your
yeah.
work.
Sound advice indeed. So let's see. One of the things I also wanted to talk about. This is great. This actually talks to about the craft of writing. Top reasons audiences don't connect with a character and how to avoid them. So let's touch on that just for a bit.
Okay, sure. So I would say that if a character doesn't feel realistic to the world that they're in, that adjust how they see the world, and the actions that they take to be in line with that world. So
Hmm.
that could be one reason, that they're just kind of out of sync with the world. Also, if a character is one-dimensional,
Hmm.
meaning that they're like all good or or negative traits, try to find put both strengths and weaknesses for that character, because all characters should really have a blend of both. In your antagonist, they should have some redeeming qualities, and your protagonist should have some qualities that are their weaknesses or some things that they need to work on.
Hmm. So one of the things that, especially for screenwriting, is that you hear that okay, you want to make your characters relatable, that you want to make them sympathetic. You want us to feel for them. So I mean that's really up to the writer to do that. But what are some, I guess, some methods that you would recommend doing that? Is it about like what's this character's backstory? How could anybody relate to it? How could they associate with that? How could they feel, oh, I know exactly what the character's going through?
I would say that all comes, yeah, from what their goal is that they're pursuing in the story, right?
Hmm.
And what their inner pathos or inner struggle is. Those are two things that are important for relatability. Also, the universality of the issues that you're exploring. So the more things that the most people can relate to, the easier that story will be for your audience to be engaged in it.
Okay, that's great. That's really good stuff. And this one I love: career pitfalls to watch out for. I mean, that just seems like it's a non-ending list. So, what are some, I guess, the top pitfalls that you would suggest that writers be especially leery of?
Well, the first thing is that that you need to value your own work as a business property, and if you ascribe a value to it, other people will as well. In terms of agents, I definitely recommend that you never pay upfront fees.
Hmm.
Reputable agents really sign a collective agreement where the money that they make is if they sell your script or if they get you a job somewhere. So those are the things. That's if they want you to pay money, then I would not work with them.
Yeah. That's one that definitely applies to screenwriting as well. Because a lot of like, oh, this manager only says if I give him $3,000, he'll help me get my movie made. It's like, run the other way and fast. So okay, so sound advice definitely, and also I don't know how much this applies to authors, but definitely for screenwriting is that make sure you have a good attorney especially for looking over contracts. I would imagine that applies for authors as well.
It does. It does. We have the Authors Guild, so they help, but they don't negotiate your contract for you, but they have attorneys there that will review them and help you to know what the industry standard is and what the best what you can expect, what's expected, and what is not standard and you should not accept in the contracts.
Okay, that's great. So the one thing I did want, and we discussed this briefly before we started, is that you have a mini workshop that a writer can do for themselves. So, I mean, they can take all the fantastic knowledge and information that you've provided today, but then they can take this, and if they want to, I guess, work on their own material and how they can develop it on their own, and that it's a very educational process.
Sure, I would be glad to do that. So what you need to do is take out either a piece of paper or just a digital, open an electronic document on your computer. And we're going to start with one kind of column of a heading column. Write down professions, then write down 3 or 4 entries, such as a profession could be a bricklayer. The next heading, character, redeeming qualities. Gracious could be a quality. Character, negative qualities or weaknesses. A quality there could be not detail oriented. Another heading, quirks, quick to panic. And then a problem to face or an ambition to achieve. And that would be wants to become the boss where they work. That could be one. So make sure you have 3 or 4. And I would say try to come up with them as quick as possible. You can think, but just jot down what first comes to mind. So that's the first step. And then the next step is to select some of the traits from the list to help you craft characters in a core situation. And then write the first scene or a synopsis for a 30-minute audio drama based on that information.
Okay, that's for audio drama. Could this apply for a character in a book or possibly a screenplay?
Oh, it could apply to anything.
Okay.
Yes. Although I know I said audio drama,
Oh.
it can apply to anything.
Okay, so it's just for overall storytelling.
Yes.
Okay, that is great. So, okay, Sperry, this has been some fantastic stuff. I love that it was such a diverse range of topics. It was really good stuff, and also you got a little education at the end. Always a nice thing. So, where can people find out more about you and your work, and how to get in touch with you?
At my website, that's really the best place to go, and that's barrymputjr.com. I also have a newsletter, and there's a link on the homepage of my website where you can sign up and find out more about what's going on.
Okay, it is Barry M. Putt, like Putt as in golf, junior, jr.com. Barry, this has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I enjoyed it as well.
Oh, good. I'm really glad. Okay, that has been Barry M. Putt Jr., but you can still call him just Barry. I will do Justin's plug since he's not here. You can check him out, Justin Sloan, on Amazon, his books and his materials there. You can also check out my books on Amazon, the Go Ahead and Ask series about screenwriting. You can also check me out on Twitter. I'm not calling it that other thing, at Maximum_Z. I'm also on Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, P-E-Z. Those are my initials. Like I said, he's Barry. That Justin's not here. I'm still Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Live podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.